So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Manon. I'm project coordinator and gender focal point for the Division of Multilateral Diplomacy at UNITAR, the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. It's a great pleasure to welcome you today on our first open webinar of the Gender Dialogue series entitled The Power of Authentic Leadership, jointly with our great expert, Shanie Gardner. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that this session is part of UNITAR's relaunched gender portfolio with our flagship initiative, the Women's Leadership Certificate, which aims to foster inclusive participation, dialogue, and capacity building in multilateral diplomacy and beyond. Before we begin, I would also like to highlight some housekeeping rules for today. The webinar will last between 45 minutes and an hour. All microphones have been muted to avoid background noise. And whilst we encourage active participation, we would like for you to ask the questions in the Q&A forum so that we can monitor the question and then we will inform the expert of your questions. The structure will be a presentation followed by a Q&A session and followed by some time should you have more questions about the gender portfolio. I remain available during the whole session should you have any questions, but before we start with the presentation, I'm very happy to introduce to you our esteemed expert, Shanie Gardner, who we have the pleasure of welcoming in our gender activities. She will lead today's session and share her expertise as a chartered psychologist and senior educational consultant with over 2 decades of experience guiding leaders and institutions through transformation across the UK and the Caribbean. She's also contributed to educational policy, public health and research, and organizational change at institutions including the University of Nottingham and Public Health in England. Today, she works with executives, entrepreneurs, and women in leadership to help them navigate the complexity with clarity and confidence, combining psychological expertise with strategic insights to create inclusive environments where equity drives performance. Without further ado, Shanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Manon, and thank you so much to everybody who's joined us today to listen and discuss how you can develop your own leadership skills and help to create more equity in your teams and leverage women's skills. My perspective today, like Manon said, is built on psychological research, meta-analyses of thousands of research data, including organisational research from decades, including promotional data, performance evaluation studies, 360-degree feedback analyses, and validated assessment reports. Unfortunately, women continue to be underrepresented. For example, out of 193 UN member states, approximately 29 countries are led by women. Within the Fortune 500 companies, 10% of CEOs are women, and it's fewer than that in the Fortune 500 5,000 companies. And this is not because women are not capable. The research shows that women leaders improve decision-making, spark innovation, and create more inclusive workplaces. So understanding and leveraging the strengths of a women's leadership has profound benefits, not just for the individuals, but for organizations and societies, particularly with the ubiquity of artificial intelligence. So this is why we need to talk. I'm so grateful to you all here today, especially for the men who we need as allies, hence the title, Gender Dialogues, the power of and also for authentic leadership. When I was at university, I got to know a young woman. She was a single parent at the time and had incredible strength of character. She'd been through abusive relationships and was determined not to let that define her future. She was in therapy, she was doing assertiveness training, and she'd often show up with self-help books and was keen to share the latest insights. She was driven to show her children possibilities, even when she couldn't see the path forward herself. I don't know how she managed it all. University studies, part-time work, and navigating all of the issues that she was trying to resolve and looking after those little children who needed everything from her. But remarkably, she showed up every day despite every excuse to give up, to be bitter, she showed up with kindness, even when kindness was probably the last thing she felt capable of giving. I'm proud to share that woman is me, and getting to know her has taken time. I don't share my story for sympathy or applause, but for you to recognize the immense potential that we have when we see our why. We often hear from people who are at top of their game, but for many of us, we're still on our journey. Our stories are unfinished, and by sharing our stories or parts of our story when relevant, help other people see their stories and the possibilities for themselves. The evidence is clear. When women leaders strengthen their inner world, they can make better decisions, manage stress, navigate crises, and lead with more creativity and clarity. So effective leadership comes from a deep connection with self. And this isn't navel gazing, but facing our truths honestly, with compassion, without shame, strengthening what we find there and healing if necessary. This connection to yourself is data so that you can lead authentically and take care of yourself. So think about what's impacted you, what matters to you, and see what you're truly capable of. Companies love to plaster their walls with their core values. It's on their websites, but we need to know what ours are so that we can make sure that our values are aligned with theirs. Because good leadership, strong leadership is modeling those values, even when no one's watching. When you're working by yourself or in informal conversations when people could be talking about people in a disparaging way. Women's strengths show that women often lead with collaboration and inclusivity, which fosters high team morale, productivity, and is referred to as transformational leadership. This enables women to inspire their teams, to develop people, and create the kind of environment where trust and engagement flourish. Empathy and emotional intelligence are key skills which women score significantly high on. These are not soft skills. They are strong predictors of leadership effectiveness. It means that women can read the room, resolve conflicts fast and ethically, navigate complex group dynamics, and motivate people. Women leaders often develop strong resilience and adaptability. In fact, their ability to lead in crises is commonly known and cited as the female leadership advantage. But we need to notice the feelings, whoever you are, because your discomfort in particular will give you great insights. Notice it, seek its meaning. Women often experience emotional dissonance between what they're expected to feel in situations and their genuine emotion. And this can often signal that your values are being challenged, or you're out of your comfort zone, or you're being asked to play a role that doesn't align with you or your values. The data clearly shows that when women try to imitate the stereotypical male leadership style, they actually perform worse than those who resonate and lean into their authentic strengths. So know you and lead authentically. And take time for what matters. For peak performance and to reduce risk of burnout, we need to prioritize our health rather than that being the first thing to go when we're feeling time poor or under pressure. And unfortunately, women do face common challenges throughout their leadership journey. And this isn't to put people off, but these are patterns, which means that we can use them, they're predictable, and then we can strategize and we can reduce them. For example, unconscious bias, uncover them. For example, the prove it again bias, where women feel that they need to demonstrate their competence over and over, while male colleagues get the benefit of the doubt. It's real, it's pervasive, it's not your fault. But seek opportunities to showcase your competencies early to reduce the unconscious bias that other people may hold. And role congruity theory is unfortunately the leadership default mental prototype problem, where people unconsciously think that leader equals male. And we know that women face second shift challenges. Globally, they spend 2.8 hours more a day on unpaid domestic work than men do. This is not a time management problem, but it creates time poverty, which then limits the discretionary hours that senior leadership roles often expect: evening work, weekends, last minute travel. This is a structural inequality which requires strategic response to navigate. And women face a double bind, walking the tightrope between being warm and collaborative and then not being taken seriously, and being direct and decisive, where they're then labelled as difficult, bossy, abrasive, another language that is not labelled, not given to men. But women can demonstrate both competence and relational skill, which is part of this transformational leadership that I talked about earlier. It's perfect. So women can be authoritative through vision and passion and showing care for their team at the same time. And women often experience imposter syndrome. This is a self-doubt, which is a predictable social psychological response to being statistically rare in their role. This is normal pattern recognition when we're questioning the legitimacy in an unfamiliar context. So understanding this mechanism can help us strategize our feelings. It is not an indication that you or another woman should not be doing that role. And the power of role modeling is so important. Seek out role models. I've done that my entire career, and offer mentorship for other people. As a role model yourself, you become living data, expanding the possibility for others. Allyship produces compelling results. This is not about social nicety. Allies who can actively advocate and amplify women's contributions and diplomatically challenge bias create structural change that goes beyond what any individual can accomplish alone, particularly if they are a minority. For instance, if a woman's idea in a meeting is being overlooked until a man says it, or she's being talked over, point it out. Help women's voices to be heard. Formal and informal women's networks demonstrably improve promotional rates and retention. We're standing at a fascinating intersection as AI reshapes how we work. And these skills of women, these strengths, emotional intelligence, ethical reasoning, collaboration, problem solving, these are irreplaceable human intelligence that are needed for the effective human artificial intelligent interaction and collaboration. My story is one of many of my stories, and it represents your stories and success. It's marked by resilience, the ability to step out of my comfort zone, seek every opportunity to learn and to develop and create networks. So I urge you to self-advocate, and for allies to advocate on behalf of other people, to articulate your accomplishments and goals, especially to yourself. Get to know yourself better every day. Identify and challenge your unconscious biases. This takes time and it's so important for minorities. Take care of yourself. Just check in. How are you doing? And take time for you and what matters. Create networks, whether they're inside or outside of work, and please be kind to yourself and each other. Thank you. Hear your questions, so thank you very much and welcome. It's great that you're dialing in from Uganda. Message from often it feels like women are under pressure to confirm or conform to a certain leadership style that does not reflect who they are in order to get results. What advice would you give? Well, like I say, I think it's about really getting to know who you are and to do you, and develop your allies identify people that can really support you. I'm not sure whether people can hear me or not. Rana, can you hear me?
Can everyone hear me again?
Oh, okay. I was talking to the screen. I wasn't sure if people could hear me. I
My
felt like I was talking to
apologies
myself.
for my
Welcome back.
apologies for this. Um, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I was saying, we are very proud to relaunch the online certificate for women's leadership, Make Your Voice Heard. As Shani has mentioned, it is really important that we open dialogue and that everybody gets a say. It will be, as from the 26th of November, the applications are open until the 24th of November. Please scan the QR code if you want more information, or feel free to reach out to me. Apologies again for this inconvenience. It appears that there was a technical issue, and we will now open the floor for questions. So the first question is to you, Shanie. Can you please explain more about the transformative leadership from your perspective?
So transformational leadership is about creating a really a very empowering environment, which is fear-free. When people are afraid, that stops them in every way, that they'll be afraid of making mistakes, so they'll stay in their comfort zones. They won't want change because it's safer to continue to do what they've always done. You often find that people then work in silos because they feel like they need their work to be noticed because they may feel like they're in competition. So it's so important that people feel safe. They feel safe to ask for help. A lot of women don't feel that they can do that because it's part of this proving themselves. So they feel so grateful to be in positions, and if they're battling with imposter syndrome, then they'll be reluctant to ask for help and are so afraid to show up if their work isn't perfect. So they'll be afraid to kind of show unfinished work, etc. So it's so important that that people are given opportunities to really leverage their strengths and are given the support to take risks and work together collaboratively. And it's transformational. So these skills that women bring, this empathy, this ability to work creatively. So if they have this empathy and they can create this culture without fear, then people can work creatively, they can take risks, they can share ideas. And that's transformational.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on this. I think what you mentioned about role models really spoke to a lot of people. We have received multiple questions of that. More specifically, you've mentioned about seeking out and being a role model. People are wondering how you do so, and if you have any advice on seeking out and knowing oneself enough to have the courage to grow into that role for others.
Yeah, I think it's key. And like through my life, I literally looked at people who I can, who I see that are aligned with my values or who are doing roles that I want to do, and I've approached them. And people are often very flattered, to be approached, and just learn as much as you can from them. Align yourself with people, ask questions, and watch. And if you can actually get a more of a formal role, to ask somebody if they could mentor you, you could ask people in your organization, you can ask people outside of your organization, like through networks like LinkedIn, amongst social circles, your own community. It's so powerful. And those people often, you could develop a really good relationship with them. So when you go for promotions, etc., that they will help guide you through those as well. And I think being a role model, it's just valuing who you are. I think we all kind of feel like, oh, just little me, but we can help each other so much. So don't underestimate the power that you can bring to other people. And it's that feeling again, it's those feelings of discomfort. If somebody comes to you as a role model, then it's about being comfortable enough with that. And often these roles that we step into, we feel so much discomfort, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be in those roles. It means we've not been in them. It feels unfamiliar, so it's uncomfortable, and we become comfortable by stepping into those roles and getting that experience.
Thank you for sharing. Maybe in line with this, you mentioned allies as well. What advice would you give an ally?
I think with allyship, I think it's listening and not jumping in. And because this, like I said, it's about diplomacy. So it's about sometimes just sitting back and having conversations with people outside the room, because we don't want to kind of attack other people, because then they'll switch off. So it's about kind of meeting people. Sometimes it is about, stopping a meeting and making sure that somebody's voice can be heard. It could be strategizing. So it's how people are seated, or, how people are given the floor. So it's not, I think, which is why the title diplomacy was on there, so that it just doesn't become a battle, which can actually do people more damage. And I think allyship is often listening. It's not knowing, I know better and I know what worked for me. It's about meeting people where they are, so that their voices can be truly heard. Because when people are different to us, and women are not a homogenous group, we can't assume things. So it's not assuming. So listening, I would say, is the most important part of allyship.
Thank you so much. And then, in line with the title of today about authentic leadership, we have received multiple questions stating, how can authentic leadership thrive in organizations that are very hierarchical or resistant to change? And we've also received questions asking, what is the line and the difference between authenticity and adaptation if your authentic self clashes with your role, requirement, or position within an organization?
Yeah, really good questions. I think the authenticity is about the values. It's about your authentic values and really knowing what your strengths are, and not trying to imitate other people or gender stereotypes. So it is stepping into space as you are, but adaptability is part of that, because we need to grow and we need to develop. So I think as long as things are aligning with your core values, and it's a developmental to reach other people and get to other people. Like I said, sometimes that adaptability could be, identifying our unconscious biases so that we can work on them and adapt in that way to become better. Or it could be choosing the right time and the right language to reach people and the right platform. So I think as long as the action is matching those core values, then that's the test. And that's why knowing your core values is so important. And you might be in an organization where things aren't aligned, and you can be a change maker, and that's where allyship can be really helpful, both in the organization and outside the organization, to bring people together as change makers, because all organizations have changed along the way. And I'm sure when we look at the history of an organization, we could be quite horrified of how things could have been at one point. So that's taken people to change, and it's much easier if people can, rally support and get and work together. That solidarity, And often what happens in organizations, which can be quite damaging, is when women separate themselves from other women, and it's like queen bee phenomena, where they will try and separate themselves from women, and that, you know, how women are being seen. They will try and imitate men, and that separation from other women can actually be very harmful to other women and other minority groups.
Thank you so much for sharing that again with us. We've discussed women's leadership and how they contribute to fostering dialogue, collaboration, and conflict resolutions. But in 3 words, how do you describe, or how would you describe how they directly contribute to these elements?
For conflict resolution.
Yeah, so basically, in what ways do women's leadership roles contribute to fostering dialogue, collaboration, and conflict resolution in diverse settings?
Yeah. So like I said before, emotional intelligence is key. So with conflict resolution, I can't speak now. Conflict resolution, the key thing is being objective. So, you know, kind of the best way to resolve conflict is to get all the information in, you know, in front of people, and look at that without emotion. So it's very objective, but then have the empathy of the situation. So that it works in the real world, and it's really supportive. And that collaborative nature of women, like bringing people together with the emotional intelligence, the data is vital for conflict resolution. And the data shows that women can do it really quickly. So they can be very, you know, resilient, very decisive, and it's a real strength of women. And there's lots of research that supports that. And we saw it during COVID.
And then when we're looking at early professionals and young women, what advice would you give them to build confidence in the workplace, especially when it's predominantly male? We're looking at young professionals, minorities, women. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Again, you know, it's about knowing themselves and noticing what they're feeling, and not holding themselves back with feeling. I like what you said there about building confidence, because you build confidence through experience. And if you feel scared, and you know, you have those butterflies, or you're not sure how to do something, and see that as a message that you shouldn't do that, then you're going to stop yourself moving forward. And I often say that, you know, the biggest limitation is the stories that we tell ourselves. So we build confidence by doing and building, and our brains start developing the patterns to realize that this is safe. So for women, again, building their networks inside and outside the organization, practicing their skills, documenting their successes, stepping into spaces where they can gain experience, just pushing forward even when they feel that they're not ready. Don't wait till you're ready, because you won't be ready until you've done it. And that's when you'll know that you were ready. So you have to push through. So yeah, so kind of getting to know yourself, giving yourself lots of data, you know, like I said, recording it, maybe have an Excel spreadsheet where you've got tab for different qualities and skills, and every time you do something, drop it in, and you'll see that grow. You'll see your the skill sets grow, and yeah, support each other, and look after yourself, because often people say, like I said, you know, it sounds a bit fluffy, but I'm not talking about, you know, necessarily meditation, but obviously meditation is great. I'm not talking about just that, but you know, it could be whatever it is that helps you to reset and brings you joy, because often that is the first thing. And people in their early careers, when they're working really, really hard to prove themselves, will say, you know, I don't have time to do my exercise, or don't have time to do whatever. But often, if these things are also social networks, then, you know, going to play tennis with the group or whatever, that's part of that network. They're the people that you can just have a quick chat about what happened at work. And actually, sport itself actually develops parts of your brain which build resilience. So, we cannot underestimate all the things that, whether it's yoga or whatever, or journaling, journaling, how are you showing up in the day? How do you want to turn up in the day? What are you proud of? What can you learn from, etc. It all works and it's all data.
Great. I think this is very inspirational for everyone in the Q&A. I'm getting very, very many different responses with positive feedback. Maybe when we look at the next generation, following up to this question, what do you think in terms of skills will be most critical for the next generation of women leaders?
Oh, wow. And the next generation, I'm fortunate, to be working in schools, and the next generation are game changers. They are incredible and they have incredible insight into themselves. They have incredible insight into their mental well-being and what they need to flourish. They really understand each other. They have this empathy. And I think for young people, it's about staying connected in the real world. Because, like I said, that's what we need with AI. AI can get us a quick answer. And I heard somebody recently say that if we just use AI to solve problems, that it's like wanting to do a marathon and getting on the bus at the start of the race and getting off at the end. Well, we've not done the marathon. And spending time together and collaborating is where real creativity comes from. Valuing other people's opinions, it's taking that time. So it might not be the quick fix, but it's a longer journey together. And I'm not against AI at all, but people, especially these young people, really need to understand the strengths that they have, their empathy, their collaboration together to problem solve and be creative is what we need to really amplify AI and amplify humans. I mean, that's the humanness that we need.
Thank you. And it builds on a lot of the work that we do at UNITAR as well in regards to AI. And it's a question we had before. So maybe quickly, from your point of view, how can AI be used to show up for each other and for female leadership?
Wow. So how can we use AI to help people show up?
Yeah, to show up for each other.
How can we, sorry, you're saying how we can show up for each other?
How AI can be used to show up.
Okay.
In
how
the
AI
broad sense.
I think I think it's how we use AI that's important and that we don't rely on it too heavily for it to replace human connection. So I think that AI, we could best use it for when we're working together and not use it in isolation. We can use it for advice and guidance, but we really need to be careful that sometimes it gives us this quick answer. And often when we're together and we're working through things together, we go through a very different path and so much learning that happens on that path. So I think that we need to have safeguards around AI, of how AI is used, especially when it's replacing human interaction. Because as we know, we are more connected than we've ever been in the world, but loneliness is prevalent, and loneliness has more impact on our physical health than smoking 20 cigarettes a day. So we need to be careful that we don't remove the connectivity and the realness of human connection. I think that's a very important safeguarding. Yeah.
Thank you. And now you're touching also on another topic that comes back is vulnerability and showing weaknesses.
Yeah.
What role does vulnerability play in authentic leadership, especially when we look at more traditional institutions?
So again, a good question, and Brené Brown has talked about, about bravery and vulnerability. I think is very personal. Again, it's know yourself and knowing where you're vulnerable and know what support you need and how to develop to step outside of your vulnerability. Anytime you're out of your comfort zone, you're going to feel vulnerable. It's out of your comfort zone, doesn't feel safe. So on a biological level, our brains will be perceiving a threat and wanting us to get back in our comfort zone. So anything, whether it's meeting people like different people, could make us feel vulnerable. Which again, if we didn't do that, could be a massive issue for inclusivity. Stepping into new spaces, promotional roles, anything. So vulnerability is important. It's an important part of moving forward. I think it's something that you have to you learn to kind of push through, and the more uncomfortable you can kind of tolerate, the stronger we get. Our brains are amazing. We have this neuroplasticity, so we become more resilient through vulnerability. And actually that has massive benefits on our health and aging and all sorts of things. So that's great. But I think there's with vulnerability and sharing, even like sharing stories. Like I don't share my story, with everybody. It's very, very private. And like I said, I choose parts of my story that I share with people. And that's vulnerable. But there's responsibility with it because, like my story could have the careful details of the story that I would share. It might be inappropriate, it might trigger people, it might distract people, all sorts of things, and it might make me vulnerable to certain things. So you have to be very thoughtful with vulnerability. So if you are stepping into a new space, then arm yourself with knowledge, reading, talking to people, learning from people, speaking to your allies, to your role models, people who are going to support you, people in your social networks, etc. So I think vulnerability is part of leadership, but then we don't want to be hurting ourselves with it. So it is a fine balance. And again, it comes back to knowing yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this. We have also had a few questions on unconscious bias and discrimination, and you've now mentioned as well that you just need to show up for yourself, but seek your allies, seek your role models. But participants are asking, what do you think is the right thing to do when discrimination persists? And how do you deal with persistent unconscious bias even after proving yourself? So yeah, your take
I
on
think
this.
unconscious bias is, it's a societal responsibility. Every single one of us, we have unconscious bias, and we have to acknowledge that. It's our responsibility to acknowledge it and do the work on ourselves to help other people. Because if we don't, we can actually do more harm. So, for example, if we were to start thinking, okay, we want to support, minority, anybody in a minority group, whether it's a woman or any kind of intersection, then we could actually do more harm if we are kind of making lots of assumptions based on our unconscious bias and trying to give people platforms, and that can turn into kind of box ticking and things like that, which can do people more harm. So I think that, goes back to self, we need to do a lot of work on ourselves. People are game changers. So if there are unconscious bias, I think it's something that, we need to work together. We need to support each other to get messages, to get messages and get action, not just people talking, but people listening, and get ourselves into as many different forums as we can, where people are wanting to listen and understand how they can take action. And unfortunately, if things are bad for people, then it's not everyone's. It's not people's responsibility to change an organization that's hurting them. So sometimes it is a case of seeking legal assistance. That is something that somebody might need to do, or to leave the organization.
Great. And maybe you've mentioned ticking boxes. We had a question from a participant saying, I think you just touched upon it, but what can organizations do to move beyond ticking boxes and truly empower women leaders? If you can shortly enlighten us on this.
Like I said, unconscious biases it really is a massive part of that. Because we'll all say that we don't do those things. I don't think there's many people that would put their hand up and say, that they're anyist at all, or we all pride ourselves on being good people, but we have a responsibility to be better, because while these issues are in the world, we can't just say, well, we know we're not those people, because we are part of an issue. So we have to look at ourselves and work together. And importantly, we need to listen. We need to listen to the people whose voices need to be heard. And, they have voices, and they have so much power in their voices. And some people don't even see, because of their own experiences, they don't see the possibilities of their voices being heard. So we have a responsibility to support people into spaces that their voices need to be listened to properly.
Amazing, thank you so much. Before going to the next questions, and probably a few of the last ones, I would like to clarify a few of the questions that we have received. So if your organization is interested in customized training in women's leadership, this is something that we can offer, and you can reach out to us. I will share my details later, as the slide shortly disappeared earlier. And also other questions that we have received in terms of the webinar, it has been recorded. So you will be able to see the recording at a later stage. So I hope this also makes you a bit more comfortable if you want to rewatch a few of the questions that have been asked, and you don't need to be worried. You will receive the recording, and maybe we can go to the next question before we close this webinar. As a final question, people have been asking, what and who inspires you every day? So yeah, please share with us who inspires you, and what you would share with our participants to read or to watch in these terms, in terms of books.
I get inspiration from many people, male and female. So Oprah Winfrey, is highly inspirational. Her personal journey, how where she started and where she is now, and the impact that she has on so many lives in such a positive way. The things she says, her grit, and the way that she shows up and always has shown up really inspiring.
Everyone can hear me, and that I am not freezing currently. Okay, whilst Shanie is getting back, I will give you more information on, you have been asking me to get more information about the certificate again, as it froze earlier. So I will give you a moment to take a picture of the QR code, save my contact details should you want to reach out to us before we close this webinar. So I will give you a few moments before we close this webinar. Perfect. So I don't know if Shanie is back, but in any case, we would love to thank her as UNITAR and particularly as our expert for the gender portfolio, for her valuable insight. But we would also like to thank you for being present today, for all the very valuable questions that you have been asking. And this has also contributed to make this a very enriching and active discussion on authentic leadership and its role in advancing inclusive participation of female leader. As I've mentioned multiple times, if you have any more questions on the certificate or what we do at UNITAR in this field, please feel free to reach out to us. We invite you to stay connected with UNITAR and explore opportunities through our website by reaching out to our team directly and subscribing to our newsletter. It's been a pleasure to welcome you from all across the world today. Thank you once again for your engagement. We look forward to seeing you in our future gender dialogues, and have a great rest of the day wherever you may be. Thank you so much.